My wife, Sarah, brought me to court. I had loved her for a long time, and I knew she was sure I wouldn't actually show up. But I did. I stood at the defendant's table and everyone looked surprised. They probably assumed I was there to admit I was guilty and take whatever punishment they gave me. But they were wrong. I was there to get back what was rightfully mine. Before we started, the judge asked very seriously, do both sides, the person suing and the person being sued, understand what happens if either of you loses? If the person suing, the plaintiff, loses, then all their stuff goes to the person being sued, the defendant, and the plaintiff goes to... The judge didn't finish. Someone else cut him off. If the defendant loses, he goes to jail for life, with no chance of getting out. Sarah glared at me. She looked like she hated me, like she didn't even know who I was, even though we'd been close for years. Sitting right next to her, acting all smug and putting his arm around her like he was her husband, was Michael. He smirked at me, like he was trying to start a fight. The judge looked at me again. Before he could say anything, I lifted my head, looked him straight in the eye, and said firmly, "Let's start the trial." He banged his gavel, that wooden hammer thing, and the trial officially began. The first thing Sarah accused me of was abandoning my parents. She said I didn't take care of them like a good son should. The court people turned on a projector, and it showed all the details of what she was accusing me of on a big screen. Another screen showed live comments from people online, thousands of them. "Isn't that Robert, the oldest son of the Miller family? He's being sued?" "What? I used to love him and Sarah together back in the day." "You never know what people are really like. He looks so nice, but he's actually terrible." When Michael saw the comments, he just grinned and hugged Sarah even closer. I squeezed my hands into fists, but I didn't say anything. The accusations against me were playing on the big screen. My grandpa appeared, his hair all white, looking weak. His eyes were blurry, but he looked right at the camera. Big tears rolled down his face, and his voice was shaky and sad. "Robert, she loved you more than anything. She's your grandma, your own flesh and blood. How could you just leave her in that empty place all alone? How could you let her take care of herself? Don't you have any feelings, any shame?" The people in the jury box started whispering to each other. Sarah gripped the table, her face looking like she was in pain. Michael gently rubbed her shoulder, talking to her softly, trying to calm her down. While everyone was paying attention to them, he secretly lifted his hand and showed off the ring on his finger, like he was bragging to me that he had won. I just scoffed quietly. Online people commented, "He is still smiling. He is a bad person. Life should not be easy. Life in prison. Sentence him to death." The judge ordered some equipment to be brought in. They hooked it up to my whole body. It was a super high-tech machine that could pull out all of a person's memories. It also worked as a lie detector, but I heard that anyone who had their memories taken out like that would just give up and plead guilty because the pain was so bad. Michael and Sarah didn't know about this memory thing. Michael's face went pale, but Sarah just kept staring at me with that same hateful look. "I want to see what you're trying to pull," I said. They started the machine, and it felt like someone was stabbing me, slowly cutting me open from the inside. The memories they were pulling out started playing on the big screen. When my mom was leaving my dad, we were with my grandparents. It was 3 years. My grandpa always liked boys more than girls, so he didn't like my mom, and he didn't really like me either. But Grandma, she was amazing. She had these magic hands that could make the simplest food taste incredible. She was strong, too. In the summer, she'd take me to the river to catch fish. She'd smooth my hair and say softly, "Robert, you're my shining star, my most precious thing." At 13, I was old enough to understand what was going on with the grown-ups. I knew that every time Grandma gave me extra meat, Grandpa would yell and scream at her. I'd lie on Grandma's lap, feeling her rough, worn-out hands that had worked so hard for so many years, and I'd promise, "Grandma, I'm going to make sure you have a good life." Grandma would smile, so kind. "Our Robert, he has such a good heart. Grandma is happy already." The memories kept flashing, showing all those good times. I'm usually pretty calm, but seeing Grandma's face made me lose it. Tears started running down my face. Sarah was crying too, her eyes all watery. Grandma had been good to me, and she loved me a lot. Only Michael looked angry. "No way, such a great grandma and he did this." "He doesn't deserve anything good. I never saw a grandson without a heart." The online comments were full of anger, people saying how awful I was. I just looked at them, not caring. When I was 16, Dad came to get Mom. He drove up in a fancy car. I didn't even know what kind it was. He was dressed all flashy, and he had a little boy with him, dressed like a little prince. That was Michael. I was standing there, looking messy, wearing clothes that used to belong to my uncle. Grandma had tried to fix them up, but they looked awful next to Michael. Dad and Mom were arguing. Grandpa was sucking up to Dad, making him tea, bowing and scraping. In the old days, men always had lots of wives. It's fine. Look, my son-in-law only chose one, not like those guys with 7 or 8. Who knows how many times he is better? Are you even my child? If you are, you should come back with my son-in-law. Mom looked like she didn't even care. I hid by the door, watching her with a cold look, like she was watching a play. Dad was saying how sorry he was, that he'd stopped seeing that other woman. In the end, Mom went back with Dad. Sitting in the fancy car, I leaned against the window and saw Grandma standing at the gate, wiping away tears. She stayed there until the car turned the corner and she couldn't see us anymore. Living in the big house wasn't nearly as fun as living in Grandma's little house. But I made it through, somehow. After I married Sarah, I moved into a new house, a wedding present, and I brought Grandma with me. By then, Grandma wasn't as healthy as she used to be. But it didn't matter. I had enough money to pay for her doctors. What I didn't expect was that Michael, somehow, convinced Sarah to let him move in with us. "He's your brother, after all," Sarah said. "He just got back to the country, and he's not used to anything. Your dad's busy, your mom doesn't like him, and he only has you, his big brother." Even though I was mad, I gave in, again and again. I got Michael everything, the best blankets, rugs, a desk, a computer, but he didn't want any of it. He walked around the house, stood in our bedroom with Sarah, and smiled, saying, "I like this room best." I was shocked. Our wedding pictures were still hanging on the wall. He had to know what room this was. Suddenly, Grandma showed up, pointing at Michael, and yelled, "Get out! This is Robert's house!" Michael was surprised, frowning at Grandma, looking annoyed. "What gives you the right to talk? You're just a servant." Grandma wasn't mad because Michael didn't know who she was. She stepped forward and pushed Michael out the door, hard. "Get out." I helped Grandma stand up and looked at Michael, saying, "She's not a servant, she's my grandma." Just then, Sarah came back. She didn't know what was going on, and she stood at the top of the stairs, asking, confused, "What's happening?" Michael immediately went to Sarah. Just a second ago, he looked disgusted and impatient, but now he was all humble. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I thought Grandma was a servant, and I made your brother mad. He told me to leave. I'll go now." Sarah frowned and looked at me, kind of angry, saying, "Robert, it's understandable that Michael doesn't know Grandma after so long. Why are you being so mean?" I tried to explain. "It's not me. Michael did it first." "Leave Michael's stuff to me, your sister-in-law. You don't have to worry about it anymore." Michael followed Sarah as they left. Watching them go, I felt like there was a huge weight on my chest, but I couldn't face Sarah and explain. I could only sit on the bed, feeling frustrated. Grandma hugged me tight. "Our Robert deserves better. If you're not happy here, Grandma will take you and we'll leave this place." Before she married Grandpa, Grandma had bought a small house in the countryside, planning to use it as a place to relax in the summer. But after she got married and had a daughter, her life became hard and miserable, and it stayed that way until she was old. The little house was never used. Looking at Grandma's wrinkled face, I felt a sharp pain in my heart. Grandma and I decided to leave together, to live our own lives, free and easy, not having to worry about anyone else's feelings or depend on anyone, but I didn't know Michael would get in the way. The afternoon we were supposed to leave, I came home from work and Grandma was gone. I looked all over the house, asked all the servants, and found out that Michael had taken Grandma out early that morning. Worried, I called Sarah, but her phone was busy. I didn't know what else to do, so I called Michael. He answered right away, which surprised me, and told me to meet him at a coffee shop. At the coffee shop, Michael smiled at me. "Didn't Grandma want to leave? I already sent her away. You don't have to thank me?" A bad feeling started growing inside me. "Where did you take Grandma?" Michael looked relaxed. "We drove for over an hour. There was nobody around, and I don't know where she is now." I couldn't believe it. He had left Grandma in some empty place. Furious, I stood up, grabbed Michael by the shirt and punched him. I didn't care that Michael fell to the ground. I just ran out, panicking. I didn't find Grandma until midnight. In an empty suburb, inside an old factory, Grandma was leaning against the wall, curled up like she was just sleeping. The cold winter night was a death sentence for an old person who was already sick. Grandma was gone. What I didn't expect was that when I got home, my family was furious at me. My dad slapped me hard, demanding, "Are you even a person? How could you leave Grandma out in the middle of nowhere?" I held my face, staring at him, confused. Michael did this, not me. My stepmom looked at me, disappointed. "Robert, I always thought you were a good, kind kid. I never expected you to... I don't even know what to say." Michael wiped away fake tears and said, his voice cracking, "If you have a problem, just take it out on me. Why are you hurting an old lady?" With everyone blaming me, I slowly realized that Michael had made it look like I was the one who did it. I stared at Sarah and whispered, "Sarah, do you believe me?" But I forgot that, no matter what, Sarah had never really been on my side. She frowned, her eyes full of disappointment and disgust. "From today on, I'll be sleeping in the other bedroom." The memory extraction stopped there. The awful pain went away, and I was soaked in sweat, breathing hard. The jury started whispering again, talking among themselves and looking at Michael a lot. The online comments went crazy, flooding the screen. "I've seen bad people, but never this bad. First time seeing such a terrible man. Truly a heartless guy. He deserves life in prison." Michael's face looked awful, and he let go of Sarah's shoulder. Sarah frowned, looking shocked as she stared at the screen. But the judge didn't give anyone time to calm down. Second accusation: being mean, hitting someone and hurting them so badly they can't have kids. Michael looked sad, sitting alone on a rooftop. Suddenly, I came up behind him, grabbed his shirt, and started punching him. He panicked, turned around, and started fighting back. While we were fighting, Michael slipped, grabbed my hand, and we both fell off the tall building. The scene changed to a hospital. A doctor shook his head, looking sad, saying, "This accident has hurt Michael's lower body, and he might not be able to have children ever." Michael lay on the hospital bed, his face pale, his eyes red. Even though he was in pain, Sarah held him gently, whispering comforting things. The two of them hugged like a married couple. Wearing a hospital gown, I stood at the doorway of the hospital room, staring blankly. No wonder Sarah doesn't like him. Who could love such a mean, awful person? He fought with someone, and he's his own brother. This means his family can't carry, so cruel. Some people online made fun of me, being sarcastic in the comments. but not a single one felt sorry for me or tried to comfort me. They were sure that I had become a bad person and was getting revenge on Sarah and Michael because of Grandma's death. Metal things pierced my skin, connecting to my nerves, taking out my memories. The pain felt like being chopped up with knives and axes, almost making me pass out. I pinched my leg hard, not wanting Sarah and Michael to see me weak. On the screen, my memories started to play. In the 3rd year of my marriage to Sarah, Michael was supposed to come back to the country. The night I found out, Sarah couldn't sleep, and she sat in the living room all night. I was feeling mixed up too, and I couldn't sleep either. If it weren't for the fact that I looked a little like Michael, Sarah wouldn't have said yes when I asked her to marry me. I had loved Sarah for years, and I had stayed by her side after she broke up with Michael, helping her get over her sadness and become strong again. Even though I knew she had never really gotten over Michael, I was still happy when she agreed to marry me. But I didn't expect our happiness to only last 3 years. On the day Michael came back, our whole family went to the airport to pick him up. As soon as he got off the plane, his eyes looked around the crowd. And when he saw Sarah, a smile instantly appeared on his face. I stood next to Sarah, reaching out to put my arm around her, trying to let Michael know that Sarah and I were married now. But Sarah was quicker. She stepped forward, grabbed the suitcase next to Michael, and started walking, being caring and warm towards him. Compared to how cold she acted towards me, she was like a different person. I knew Sarah had never really let go of Michael in her heart. In this situation, my love for her only left me feeling silently bitter. I foolishly believed that Sarah and I were married, and that was a fact that couldn't be changed. I thought that with time, and by giving everything I had, I could change Sarah and make her love me. This fake idea I had was destroyed when I saw Michael with Sarah at the doctor's office, the one for women and babies. When I got home, I found Sarah's old ultrasound picture, and I realized she was already 2 months pregnant. Michael put out his cigarette, spit on the ground, and looked at me, kind of looking down on me. "You found out pretty late, huh? Actually, the baby in Sarah's belly was already there the night I came back to the country. See, Robert, even though you and Sarah are married, she still couldn't resist coming to me. But it doesn't matter. As a brother, I won't hold it against you. Once my son is born, you can be his bodyguard. The people who inherit the Miller and Lee families aren't just anyone." I felt a rush of anger inside me. My hand, hanging by my side, slowly clenched into a fist. I couldn't understand why Sarah would betray me. Seeing Michael about to leave, I lost control and grabbed his hand tightly. "What do you mean? Sarah couldn't have cheated on me." Michael shook off my hand, looking disgusted, pulled out a tissue, and wiped the spot on his side where I had touched him. "What do I mean? Isn't it obvious? Take a good look. A person's worth is all about knowing yourself. If I were you, I would have packed my bags and left a long time ago. It's sad, really. Even if you begged Sarah, she wouldn't sleep with you." Michael tossed a picture, a close-up of him and Sarah, right at my face, and it fluttered to the floor. He walked away, acting like he'd just won a war, a smirk on his face. My head was pounding and I was breathing fast. I had to lean against the wall, trying to get a grip. But everything was too much. My breathing got even faster, and my mind just went blank. I passed out, right there. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. A doctor nearby saw me wake up and tried to reassure me. "Sir, you need to try and stay calm. You were hyperventilating. Luckily, you fainted in the hospital. Whatever's going on, remember that your life is the most important thing. You only get one. Don't give up so easily because of other people." The doctor's words helped. I decided that this time I was going to take control and I wasn't going to let Michael win. But I had no idea what was coming next. Sarah's pregnancy wasn't going well. She was only 3 months along, but there were signs she might lose the baby. She wouldn't give up on her and Michael's child. so she checked into the hospital. I had already told the media to release the story that Miss Lee, from the Lee family, was maybe pregnant. It just so happened that they caught pictures of Michael with Sarah while she was checking into the women's section of the hospital. While Sarah and Michael were busy with the hospital stuff, the internet was going crazy with rumors and guesses about their relationship. People even started to think that the baby Sarah was carrying was Michael's. All I could say was those online people were pretty sharp. As the rumors kept swirling, I decided it was time for me to show up. Looking tired and worn out, I walked into Sarah's special care room. When she saw me, Sarah frowned, protecting her belly, and asked, "What are you doing here?" I put down the thermos I was carrying and smiled at her. "Wife, this is chicken soup I made for you. Drink it. It'll be good for you." Maybe she was scared I'd messed with it because Sarah didn't move. So I poured myself a bowl of the soup and drank it. Then I smiled. "See? No poison." Only then did Sarah slowly drink the chicken soup I had made for her. The reporters couldn't get to the floor where Sarah's room was. When I left the elevator, I made sure to look sad. When I saw the cameras flashing, I quickly forced a smile, but it looked awkward. The reporters stuck microphones in my face, asking whose baby Sarah was carrying and what was going on between Michael and Sarah. I didn't say anything directly. I just told the reporters, "The baby Sarah's carrying will definitely be the next leader of both the Miller and Lee families." After that, I left it up to the media to guess and write whatever they wanted. Within an hour, an article titled, "Elder Master Miller Mysteriously Pregnant, Miss Lee's Child Believed to be Miller's Second Master's Son," was all over social media. But surprisingly, Sarah and Michael didn't come to confront me. I wanted to figure out what was going on, and I overheard Sarah and Michael talking at the entrance to the hospital room. "Robert probably knows I'm carrying your child, Michael. What are we going to do?" "Don't worry. If Robert dies, it won't matter anymore." Standing at the door, my breathing started to get fast again. I could only try my best to stay calm. I never imagined that Sarah and Michael would actually want to kill me. The screen went fuzzy, then all distorted. The judge stood up, waving for the tech guy to come over. This was the first time during a live trial that a monitor had messed up. The tech guy checked it out carefully for a while, then announced that the memory extraction was too painful for me, and it triggered my body's defense system. The online comments updated in real time. "Oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before." How painful must the following events be? My goodness, people may know faces but not hearts. Ezekiel is terrible. Extract the memories quickly. I need to see what happens next. As the online comments got more intense, Sarah cleared her throat and made a request. "The rest of what happened, everyone has already seen." "Sarah, are you even human?" Just as everyone's attention went back to the earlier playback, where I pushed Michael off the building, hurting his lower body and making him unable to have kids, a young voice suddenly spoke up, breaking the tension. "It's the doctor from that day." "Oh my God, why is she here?" "The truth behind the events is about to be revealed. We're about to find out who the real villain is. I stand with Elder Master Robert. A child raised by Grandma can't be a bad person." That's not necessarily true. People with closed personalities often end up being antisocial. The online comments went wild again. The judge took the paper handed to him by the clerk, adjusted his glasses, and read it carefully. Then he banged the gavel, calling for silence in the courtroom. "Dr. Emily has come to speak for Elder Master Robert. Based on the principles of fairness and justice, if Emily's testimony is found to be false, she will also be sentenced to life imprisonment and lose all her personal belongings." Dr. Emily's memories were quickly pulled out. Michael held a test report, his eyes wide with shock. The report showed that Michael had low sperm count and the signs that Sarah's baby might not survive were closely related to him. But the baby Sarah was carrying was something he had worked hard to create. If the baby was lost, given his current condition, getting Sarah pregnant again was basically impossible. But the doctor said that if Sarah didn't have surgery, she would be in danger. Michael hesitated, over and over. He didn't want anyone else to know about something so embarrassing. "Doctor, if someone accidentally falls from upstairs and hits their lower body, would that make it impossible for me to have kids?" I didn't expect Michael to be so cruel. Emily's face looked conflicted. "Mr. Miller, you only have a low sperm count, which can be treated. There's no need to hurt yourself like this." Emily was Sarah's personal doctor, and this hospital was also run by the Lee family. She had seen a lot of these high society schemes, but she chose not to expose them. "Don't do it to him, Mr. Miller," Emily carefully advised Michael. "Even if Miss Sarah can't keep the baby, as long as you get the right treatment, you can still have children in the future." "What do you know?" Michael glared at Emily, his eyes filled with craziness. "I never imagined Sarah would marry Robert. I asked her to marry me so many times she never said yes, but she agreed to that fool Robert. I don't know if it was the old man finally having a conscience, but in the will, he gave Robert an extra 15% of the company. Plus the 10% he already had, he has more than me. If I hadn't held on to Sarah tight to make her divorce Robert, do you think I'd still have the time to sit here and talk to you? Sarah only says she loves me. If anything were to happen between us, she would have been too shy. If I hadn't put something in her drink, she wouldn't have stayed that night. I'm also a young master of the Miller family. I'm no worse than Robert. Why should I give in to Robert just because I wasn't born from the main wife? I won't do all this work just for him to benefit." Michael poured out all his frustrations, angrily put on his coat, and left the room. The scene changed to my hospital room. I was wearing a hospital gown, my face pale, my mind filled with the image of Michael dragging me down the stairs. He had clearly wanted me to die. If I hadn't been cushioned by the awning when we fell, I don't think I would have only broken a few ribs. Meanwhile, I hadn't noticed Emily entering to check my medical records, telling the nurse to take good care of me. Later, Michael was diagnosed with severe injuries to his lower body, making it impossible for him to have children. A few days later, late at night, I was attacked in an alley and stabbed in the stomach. If it weren't for my aunt passing by and calling an ambulance, I might have died. The emergency room lights stayed on all night, and I finally escaped danger. While Michael was surrounded by people in the hospital being comforted and cared for, I lay alone on the hospital bed, dealing with the pain from my stab wound. I hadn't been discharged yet, and I hadn't recovered from the fact that Michael and Sarah had hired someone to stab me. New blows came quickly. I received a summons to be taken to the lifetime court by Sarah and Michael. Just a single summons seemed completely not enough to help Sarah's true love get his anger out. The next day, several businesses under the Miller family sued me in the business court, accusing me of misusing my company power and leaking business secrets. On the third day, the Lee family's businesses also sued me for losing public trust, causing Lee's stock to drop, and claiming that I needed to take responsibility. On the fourth day, a bright red invitation stood out, obvious inside a white summons. Struggling to get up and confront Sarah and Michael, I ignored my weak body and fell to the ground, tearing my wound that hadn't healed yet. Again. In my state of low spirits, Emily arrived. "Oh my God, the fighting within wealthy families is truly inhumane. Sometimes, not having money is a kind of happiness." While the online comments complained about the ruthless battles within wealthy families, Emily's image flashed rapidly on the screen. Unable to stand Michael and Sarah's actions, her conscience clear, she chose to help me fight the lawsuits. Because of her poor health, Emily helped me gather many documents. We often discussed things late into the night. These actions became Sarah's third accusation against me. Having an affair with the family doctor, setting up Sarah and causing the lovesick Sarah to almost think about killing herself. Fortunately, Emily was one step ahead, expecting Sarah's accusations. As a result, we never discussed things alone. From outside, only our two figures could be seen, sitting together behind the drawn curtains, but the cameras inside clearly showed a busy room full of people. By this point, Sarah's face looked extremely unpleasant. Michael, who had thought he was sure of sending me to hell, didn't dare speak badly of me anymore after seeing this situation. Sarah, furious, stood up from the plaintiff's seat and threw a stack of photos and several ultrasound reports in front of me. I almost forgot that half a year ago, I had gone with my cousin, who had been treated well by Grandma, except for my grandfather, to her pregnancy checkup. She had been tricked by her ex-boyfriend and lost her virginity. At first, she wanted to get rid of the baby, but the doctor said she had trouble getting pregnant, and if she got rid of the baby, it would be very hard for her to have children in the future, so she decided to keep it. However, she didn't dare tell anyone except me, her cousin. I went with her to the pregnancy checkup, but I didn't expect that Sarah had already hired someone to follow me, trying to get proof of my affair. Fortunately, after Michael came back, he forced me and her to get a divorce. Half a year ago, Robert went with a woman to a pregnancy checkup. Now this child is almost a month old, and I've been sleeping separately from him for almost a year. If I lost the lawsuit, as the main person suing, Sarah would also be sent to prison for life, an outcome he couldn't accept. Moreover, my uterus is shaped wrong. For her own benefit, Sarah revealed a secret she intended to hide for a lifetime. It seemed that the signs that her and Michael's baby might not survive were not only because Michael had a low sperm count, but also because of her strangely shaped uterus. Ridiculous. In her youth, Sarah had been taken by her mother to see a doctor because her periods were irregular. She knew her uterus was shaped wrong, but neither Sarah nor her mother dared to speak up, especially since Sarah was the only person who would inherit the Lee family's fortune. Additionally, Sarah was chosen by her grandfather to be the next leader. If the Lee family found out that Sarah couldn't have children, they might find a suitable heir from somewhere else, giving Lee's father a reason to look for a son somewhere else. Lee's mother was unwilling to give up the wealth she had worked so hard for. After all, her strangely shaped uterus hadn't affected Sarah's normal life. Once Sarah fully obtained the Lee family's inheritance rights, she could get treatment without delay. However, this was put off until now. Therefore, she was unwilling to marry Michael for this reason. So she was unwilling to give up the child she had worked so hard to conceive. Unfortunately, she didn't know that Michael had also hidden his low sperm count. The judge's face darkened as he signaled the tech guy to attach the memory extraction device to Sarah. Finally, the truth was about to come out. Because of this secret she couldn't talk about, Sarah had maintained a so-called friendship love with Michael, being reluctant to agree to his marriage proposals. Major media outlets competed to report that the person who would inherit the Lee family had been deeply in love with Michael, the second master of the Miller family, ever since they broke up, even unwilling to settle down for the sake of the family. However, over time, Sarah needed to get married and have the next heir to the family. Moreover, opponents took the chance to attack the Lee family's reputation by spreading rumors that Michael and Sarah were just pretending to be lovers and that Sarah was gay, causing the Lee family's stock and business values to drop. Under these circumstances, Sarah had to quickly find someone to date and marry to stop the wild rumors. Although she deeply loved Michael, she knew that Michael wanted to marry her just to put down the second master of the Miller family. If he discovered her secret, he would probably abandon her and expose everything. Extremely ridiculous, Sarah, who found everyone else unpleasant, was so in love with Michael that she was love-struck. She couldn't reveal her own secret and could only watch her beloved fly away, too afraid to stop him. Under these conditions, Sarah set her sights on me, who had always loved her silently. I will never forget the day she asked me to marry her. It was a lazy afternoon. I had just woken up and went downstairs to see Sarah sitting in my living room. At that time, Grandma was still alive. Her eyes sparkled, and she smiled at me, taking my hand and shyly kissing my cheek. She told Grandma that she had liked me for a long time and wanted to walk hand in hand with me through the days to come. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall tree leaves outside the window, scattering golden spots that made her look as beautiful as an angel. Her eyes were lovely, shaped like peach blossoms, filled entirely with me. The days that followed were just as the memory extraction device replayed. After marriage, I was always the one giving, loving deeply. But in return, I faced betrayal and harm. "That girl isn't Robert's lover, she's his cousin. And the child isn't his either, it's his cousin's and her ex-boyfriend's." Emily broke the silence, throwing out a paternity test report that showed the child had no blood relation to me, and that there was a 99.9% chance the child was biologically hers and her cousin's. Emily's father was the doctor for the Lee family, dedicating his life to serving them. Emily and Sarah had been childhood friends. Originally, when Sarah discovered her strangely shaped uterus, she didn't think much of it. It was only her mother occasionally whispering in her ear that made her feel like she was truly, permanently damaged. Over time, her mind became twisted. This psychological distortion completely erupted after she fell in love with Michael. She wanted to hold on to Michael, but knew she had difficulty conceiving. First, she begged Emily to have a child for Michael in her place, but Emily refused firmly. Later, she decided to drug both Emily and Michael, locking them in a room to force them to be intimate. When Emily came to her senses, she was devastated and wanted to report Sarah and Michael for drugging and raping her. However, Sarah threatened Emily by involving her hospitalized father, demanding that Emily have Michael's child on her behalf. Emily's father had been a doctor all his life, and after retiring, developed severe bipolar dementia, requiring 24-hour care. The huge medical expenses burdened young Emily, who had just graduated from medical school and had no job. Her family's life savings were all spent on her father's treatment. Watching her elderly father lying in bed, Emily chose to silently endure the humiliation. After several years bedridden, her father passed away, and Emily originally thought she could finally leave the awful Lie family. But Sarah recorded videos of her and Michael in bed to blackmail her. Even if Michael left, Sarah forbade Emily from leaving. Sarah claimed that, since she was already malformed, the Lee family's future heirs would still have to come from Emily's womb. Thus, Emily lived numbly day after day, waiting for a moment to take down Sarah. This included spreading rumors that Sarah was gay. Unfortunately, Sarah quickly married me, making such rumors collapse on their own. Emily waited and finally seized the opportunity when Michael returned to the country. She wanted to kill the man who had raped her. But more importantly, she aimed to take down both Michael and Sarah. She had been constantly encouraging Michael, telling him that he must ensure Sarah conceived a child with blood from both the Miller and Lee families to legitimately win the power struggle within the wealthy clans. In reality, Sarah had already undergone surgery to fix her strangely shaped uterus. Being a generational consultant doctor, and coupled with Sarah's previous car accident, no one knew the truth. She had also instructed the family chef that Sarah, upon discharge, was physically weak and needed to focus on her diet for recovery. The chef dared not say anything. Hidden deep within, Sarah took bowl after bowl of fertility-enhancing drugs. Besides the fertility drugs, Emily retaliated by giving Sarah and her bodyguard other medications to induce labor and keep them confined together. Sarah hadn't fully recovered from surgery and forcibly tried to have a child, but the child couldn't be kept. As for Michael, He was merely a pawn in Emily's plan. To ensure my plan was foolproof, after you underwent the pregnancy termination surgery, I tested the blood relation of the child in your womb, Emily explained calmly, holding the memory extraction device, feeling satisfied for finally getting her revenge. In simple terms, the child in your womb is indeed your child. Emily suddenly sat up straighter, staring intently at Sarah. But the father of the child isn't Michael, nor is it Robert, but the bodyguard next to you. I suggest you take a look at the explicit screenshots of you and your bodyguard on social media before they get blocked. Emily's words drifted through the courtroom like a ghost, sending chills down people's spines and leaving their faces pale, with no one speaking for a long time. The matter was finally concluded. Sarah and Michael became despised outcasts, and I was set to restart my life. I finally was able to get back everything that belonged to me and reclaim my place in my family's company. I decided to visit my grandma's little house in the countryside. It was old and a little run down, but it still held all those precious memories of us together. I cleaned it up, planted some flowers, and made it a place where I could go to remember her and feel close to her. I decided I am no longer going to worry about other people's feelings or rely on favors from others. Emily, free from Sarah's threats, decided to open her own clinic. She wanted to use her skills to help people who really needed it, without the pressures and corruption of the wealthy families. We stayed in touch, sometimes meeting for coffee and talking about our lives. We had both been through a lot, and it was comforting to have someone who understood. As for my family, well, things were complicated. My father and stepmother finally realized how badly they had treated me. Influenced by Michael's lies, they tried to apologize, but it was hard to forgive them completely. I decided to maintain a polite distance, focusing on my own life and happiness. The company was doing well, and I made sure to treat my employees fairly and create a positive work environment. It was a fresh start, and I was determined to make the most of it. I was also determined to keep living the promise I made so many years ago. I would do good and be a good person, to honor my grandmother and be the person she always believed me to be. The courtroom, the trials, the accusations. It all felt like a distant, bad dream. I had learned a lot about myself, about the people around me, and about the importance of staying true to what you believe in. It was a painful journey, but it had led me to a place where I could finally be free, be myself, and live a life filled with genuine purpose and, hopefully, some real happiness. And I also knew that this fresh start was not just for me, but to show Sarah and Michael that I could rise above the pain and misery and live well.